Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you where Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. got his story to tell to the grand jury. It was all secondhand information, nothing firsthand. Like I said once again, lies run sprints, but the truth runs marathons. You're going to really be amazed at this one. Let's get into some of the straight game.
Life is like those cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, a Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor. Click on what appears to be the thumbs up button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this Straight Game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I got another bombshell. I'm going to show you that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., throughout this whole debacle, him going and testifying in front of the grand jury, allegedly pretending to know more than he did, acting like he was there for the situation. As you've seen the video that I gave you guys last night involving the 15 minutes. Like I said, once again, you know, it was ironic to me that the grand jury, the attorney and the grand jury didn't ask Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. More poignant questions like, so when you went to the MGM Grand, with the question that was asked basically, so when Mr. Alexander and Tupac Shakur were at the MGM Grand, did you eventually get down there, right? He's asking them when Tupac Shakur and Frank were at the MGM Grand. So evidently he wasn't at Club 662. So, but they were alluding to during the whole time of questioning it. So you spent most of your time down at Club 662, you know, during the time. No, that wasn't true. And it was revealed in the testimony. But check this out. I got something for y'all. This is exclusive because I'm going to show you where Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. got his testimony to give to the grand jury. Watch this. So now I want you to pay attention to two things. And this is so funny because it's like, it's funny, but it's sad because, you know, once you get it, you're like, oh, wow, he didn't do that. Yeah, he did do it. Watch this. Check this out. So now, this is Frank talking about what happened that night. And he's talking about them ultimately catching a cab to the MGM Grand. Remember, I told you, I mentioned something about this, you know, early. But listen, Frank says, and this is from his book, I Got Your Back, right? So listen, I ain't worried about it. Pop, that ain't the point, right? Frank's asking him, remember, Tupac had left the MGM Grand earlier that evening that I told you guys about. He had left it after gambling. He had left the MGM Grand because Michael Moore was there too, and Michael Moore walked back to the MGM Grand with Frank after he attempted to call Reggie and left a message on the payphone. So listen, Frank is talking to Tupac now. He said, I ain't worried about that, Pop. That ain't the point. I know you can fight. Tupac telling him he can fight. I'll be all right. I can handle myself, blase blah. Mind you, Michael Moore is with Tupac when he went back over to the MGM Grand from gambling. Like, check it out. Frank saying the point is you need security to step in and stop things before they happen. And Frank asked Tupac, do me a favor. Don't shake me anymore. I want you to pay attention to that statement right there. That don't shake me anymore. Just remember, don't shake me anymore, right? Frank saying, don't leave me without knowing where you're at, right? For all his bravado, he seemed distracted. It really appeared to bother him that the outlaws were missing. He called them about a half a dozen times, but couldn't reach them, right? the whole thing was odd because they were always with him. He was like pissed off. He was like a pissed off dad whose kids had run off to play. We sat down near a house phone and waited for someone to turn up, right? After another attempt to reach Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., listen, we managed to hook up, right? He told us Suge would meet us at the MGM Grand before the fight. Listen to this part right here, ladies and gentlemen. Listen. It was too hot to make that walk again, so we decided to catch a cab. Now, initially, Frank is basically explaining that they were going to walk, but it was too hot. So at the last minute, they decided to catch a cab. This is Frank talking about what's going on. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. knows nothing about this. As you can see, it was a last minute decision for them to catch a cab. He was like, yo, it was too hot to walk, so we decided to catch a cab. Remember, do me a favor, Tupac, don't shake me anymore, right? And it was too hot to make the walk, so they decided to catch a cab. I want you to pay attention to that and check this out, ladies and gentlemen. This is Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. I want you to understand something, ladies. This is Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. now in front of the grand jury, the Keefe D grand jury, right? Testifying as if he knows what was going on at the time it was happening because he was fully aware. He wasn't. He read Frank's book, stole the information from Frank's book, right? And went and regurgitated it to who? To the grand jury, as if he was in all in the know. Check this out. As everybody was being informed that he was, look at this, watch this. This shit is so crazy. Oh man. So look, the answer that he gave, they were asking him, he said, talking about going to the MGM, he said, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said, I didn't go because of issues at the club, of course, and us being unorganized, where to even the fact that Mr. Shakur, listen to this, Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight, as everyone did, and pretty much informed me, right, that he was tired of going to the fight late, right? Because Mike Tyson's fights usually were over back then in the first round. And that even Mr. Shakur was his music, he had rapped a song for him to enter the ring, right? And wanted to be there for that. And he and his security caught a cab over to the fight. Ladies and gentlemen, did you hear that? So the question again, the question from the investigator said, so Mr. Shakur took a cab to the MGM Grand for the fight? And Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. answers, yes, sir, from the Luxor. Where did he get that information, ladies and gentlemen? He got it from Frank's book. Frank said it was too hot to walk. So we decided to catch a cab over to the MGM Grand, right? Listen, remember, you got it. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to listen to this, right? Okay, remember, the do me a favor, Tupac, don't shake me. Remember that, right? Okay, now check this out. So, the All Hip Hop did an interview with Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. The question is, another thing that was presented in the movie was the use of the walkie-talkies, which was pretty much standard for your staff at the time, were available and not available for Mr. Alexander. Listen to what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said. Frank had been on vacation the week prior. The thing is, Pac hated Frank. That's why he shook Frank at the casino. Ladies and gentlemen, where did Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. get that information from? Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Let's go back. What did Frank say? What did Frank ask Pac? He said, do me a favor. Don't shake me anymore. And Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. took that information took that information and used it in an interview as to try to create a theory as to Tupac not liking Frank, and that's why he shook Frank at the casino. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. would have known nothing about that, ladies and gentlemen. And the cold part about it is he used the same exact words as Frank did. So you know where he got it from, right? He's saying, then listen. Remember, y'all, he's telling two different stories. He hated Frank so much. So in this interview, he's saying, Pac called and said, Reggie, why the fuck? I told you I don't want this dude with me no more. I told you the one I want is Hacky. I told him all the other guys were at the club. What happened to Michael Moore? Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. pulled them off of him when Michael Moore was at the MGM with Tupac and Frank earlier that evening. I'm going to show you that too, but check this out. He didn't care. He really liked Kevin. Now remember, you got to remember now. You got to remember. He's now telling all hip hop, right, that Tupac called and said, Reggie, why the fuck I told you I don't want this guy. When did that happen? Tupac never called a Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., ladies and gentlemen. That's a lie. That's a lie. Why? How do we know? Look, man, I'm giving you the straight game check. How do we know that that's a lie? What does he say right here? Right? He's saying Mr. Shakur, to the grand jury, he's saying Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight, right? As everyone always did, and pretty much informed me that he was tired of going to the fight late because Mike Tyson fights usually were over back then in the first round. And that even Mr. Shakur was his music, he had rapped a song for him to enter the ring in and wanted to be there for that. Right? And he and his security caught a cab over to the fight. Ladies and gentlemen, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., let me look. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. didn't talk to Tupac. Remember that conversation? Look, remember this right here? Remember that right there? When Frank called Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. looking for Suge because Tupac told him, listen, look, I'm not playing with y'all, man. I got it right here for you. I got it right here for you. Hold on. Let me pull this up. Here we go right here, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Here we go right here. Look. What did Frank say? This is Frank's book. We hung out for a while. As the fight began to draw closer, I watched Tupac begin losing patience. I hate this shit. Suge does this shit all the time. It was 15 minutes. The 15 minutes that I gave y'all, right? 15 minutes before fight time. And Tupac was getting restless. The pre-fights were over. Right? And Tyson and Seldon were up next. Fuck this shit. Every time we go somewhere, he always gotta be fucking late. Tupac's eyes were blazing. I didn't want to come to Vegas no fucking way. We're gonna miss the fucking fight. Despite security efforts to keep the crowds away from him, fans kept working their way towards him, taking pictures, asking for autographs. I watched him get visibly more tense each minute as each minute ticked by. What did Pac ask Frank to do? Go call Reggie and find out where he is. Go call Reggie and find out where Suge Knight was. Right? Frank did that, went to the payphone once again, trying to appease Pac. Right? Right? Check it out now. I want you to pay attention. What Frank was saying, that Tupac was saying all of the things. Once again, does that look familiar? When Tupac saying, I hate this shit. I hate, every time he come, he always late and blase, blase, blah. Don't that look familiar? Right? Don't that look familiar? Don't that look like this? That's Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. at the grand jury. basically reiterating what Frank was saying that Pac was saying in his book. Right? Basically reiterating to the grand jury what Pac in real time was saying to Frank Alexander that Frank put in his book. But what did Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. lie about here? He lied about what? He said what? I didn't go because of the issues at the club, of course, and us being unorganized, where to even the fact that Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight. No, Tupac didn't call him. Frank called him. But if he told the truth and said that he talked to Frank instead of Tupac, right? Then he couldn't have never said that he didn't know that Frank was the only one on Tupac that night. He knew. He lied. He's lying. And here it is. You see it right here. Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight. Tupac didn't call him. Frank called him. Because Tupac told him to call, ladies and gentlemen. Frank would have no reason to lie, but Reggie would have every reason to lie, as we've caught him in 5 or 10 different lies already, right? So what does he say that Tupac said? He called Mr. Knight, called me looking for Mr. Knight, as everyone did, and pretty much informed me that he was tired of going to the fight late. Right? Ain't that what Frank said in his book? That she'll always show up late because Mike Tyson fights usually be over in the first round. Right? And then you get down to the bottom of it where it said what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. volunteer that Frank said in his book also that he didn't know nothing about until he read Frank's book was what? And his security, he and his security called a cab over to the fight. The question, so Mr. Shakur took a cab to the MGM Grand for the fight? Yes, sir. From the Luxor. Ladies and gentlemen. You see what I'm saying? Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. basically hijacked Frank's story. He replaced Frank with Tupac as to calling when they were at the MGM Grand looking for Suge. He said that Tupac called him. Right? Tupac didn't call him, man. Frank called him. And Frank said what he said in the book. And Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. would not have known the conversation because he didn't talk to Tupac. He knew the roundabouts of what was said from Tupac to Frank. And Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. chose to use that information and go in front of the grand jury and speak on it as if he had actually talked to Tupac firsthand. So the cab situation, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. didn't know. Right? As to when they got to the MGM Grand, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. didn't know until Frank called Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., letting him know that him and Tupac were at the MGM Grand and they looking for Suge, trying to find out where he's at. And as to the part where what Frank asked Tupac, what did he ask him, y'all? This shit is hilarious, man. What Frank asked Tupac, do me a favor, don't shake me anymore. Don't leave me without me knowing where you at, right? And what did Reggie go in front of the front of all hip hop and say? What did he tell him? What did Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. tell him? What did he say? Frank had been on vacation the prior week. The thing is, Tupac hated Frank. That's why he shook Frank at the casino. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. didn't know none of that information. He read Frank's book and began to go out in interviews and regurgitate the firsthand information that Frank had, so much so that what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. would end up doing, trying to get Frank to lie. Say Orlando tried to snatch the chain, trying to get Frank to not answer the subpoena. Threaten Frank's life. Yeah, all of that happened. So now you know exactly where Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. Got the information from to go in front of the grand jury. A lot of the information he didn't know, and he didn't talk to Tupac that night, ladies and gentlemen. Point blank, period. He didn't talk to Tupac. Frank Alexander did. But Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. couldn't say that. He had to put himself once again, like he lied and said he ran death row. He lied and said that Tupac called him that night looking for Suge Knight when it was actually Frank Alexander. And Frank admitted that. Frank didn't have to lie about that. That was his job, right? Point blank, period. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is a scoundrel. He's a liar. He went in front of the grand jury, ladies and gentlemen, and he lied. Point blank, period. You know, and that's the sad part about it. You know, when you think about the big picture. And this here too, look, you know, this is another crazy part about this whole situation. When you think about it, you say, whoa, what so listen, look at this. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. gave the answer, nothing. That's the only problem I had with my security, Mr. Alexander, that he didn't notify me when it transpired. But he said his walkie-talkie, because we had walkie-talkies back then, right? Where they could operate like two-way radios. They had a dual, it could be a phone or it could be like a walkie-talkie. Remember, he had been denying that. He says it one time again in the grand jury testimony. He didn't notify me, but that was his first day back from being off for like a month, right? He said for like a month right there, right? Listen, he was off for like a month. Pay attention to that. He was off for like a month. Right? Frank had been on vacation the week prior. He said he was off for like a month. He said here the week prior. But let me go back to it, y'all. Check it out. So now, but his first day back from being off for like a month, he said his walkie-talkie, he hadn't gotten his walkie-talkie, or it was dead or something like that, right? But no one had told me what happened, which, to be honest, a fight, it was kind of common. Ladies and gentlemen, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. knew damn well when he made that statement. Listen, when he went in front of the grand jury and made this statement, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. knew full and damn well that Frank did not have a walkie-talkie. How do we know that, y'all? Frank, earlier that day, called Reggie from the MGM Grand and left a message. You remember that statement, right? What did Frank say? Frank said he left a message from a payphone. Now, you gotta look. The man said he left a message from the payphone, right? Right? Listen, right here. This is where he said that. You see it. Let's go down to the bottom of here, where I couldn't believe I'm rolling with Death Row's $1 Million Boy, one of the biggest rap stars in the world, and I got to use a payphone, right? I must have left him for about a minute, long enough to leave Reggie a message from a public phone a couple of feet away before making my way back to the table, and Pac wasn't there, ladies and gentlemen. So why in the hell would Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. then make this statement? He said he hadn't gotten his walkie-talkie, or it was dead, or something like that. You can tell he's lying. Ladies and gentlemen, Frank Alexander, early in that evening, left a message from a payphone. That wasn't the first time he called him from a payphone. Remember that, right? Huh? He would go in front so you could see all the way around he was lying. All the way around he wasn't. That wasn't the first time. That wasn't the first time, right? What was the other time? Huh? What was the other time? Right here. Remember, 15 minutes before the fight time. Tupac told him what? Go call Reggie and find out where he is, where Suge is. This 15 minutes before the fight, y'all. Frank goes to another payphone and calls him again. So when Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. went in front of the grand jury, ladies and gentlemen, when he went in front of the grand jury and he made this statement right here, he knew goddamn well it was a lie. He knew it was a lie. And he was supposed to know way better than that based on the fact that he was the owner of a Wrong Way Security that failed Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight on that night. But not only that, sabotaged the security. Keefe D said he seen Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. in the entourage of cars right before and after the shots rang out. Right? Michael Moore said Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. never came down to the club. Never. And that night was weird, ladies and gentlemen. So you see it right here where he got his story from. He stole it from Frank, went in front of the grand jury and acted like he was the hero. He wanted to be the hero. But, ladies and gentlemen, Keefe D is implicating Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. as the mastermind, along with Keefe D basically implicating himself and the other people that he said that was in the car with him when it happened. This is going to be a hell of a trial, ladies and gentlemen. But like I said, once again, here you have the facts. The facts of the matter, ladies and gentlemen. Right here, right in front of your face. The statements, not what I said, but what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said, how he lied, how he stole Frank's story, how he learned about the cab situation, how he learned about Tupac allegedly shaking Frank and then going and using that in the interview. That's why Tupac shook Frank. What? Now you see where he got it from. Ladies and gentlemen, your boy Delray, straight gang.
They said Tupac was untouchable, but behind the walls of Rikers Island, he was just a man, wounded, watching his back, and wondering who he could trust. He survived bullets, betrayal, and isolation behind bars. But what happened inside those walls has never been told until now. In the darkest corner of Rikers, he found betrayal and a brotherhood no one saw coming. These dudes smiled in my face, then flipped and tried to kill me, and I never saw it coming. They were Puff's security, Biggie's muscle, Henchman's people, and Tupac knew exactly who sent them. This is the side of Tupac Shakur the world never got to see, told by the man who lived it with him, not in the studio, but in a 6x9 cell. The rap battles, sex and drama with female guards, the tears, the silence after Jada Pinkett's visit, and the moment Tupac almost broke. Before Death Row, before All Eyes on Me, before Machiavelli, there was Rikers. Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur, available now on Amazon. Get your copy. Learn the truth.